tap dancing, ukuleles. I play the Saw. I literally play the musical Saw. So it's like literally anything that was popular in vaudeville seems to be where my heart goes, strangely enough. I don't know why. Or I have two accordions that I don't know how to play, but I feel like they should be a part of my shtick.
He's a character actor who has worked regularly in film, television, and on Broadway.
He is currently one of Disney's dwarfs in the recently released Snow White.
Jason Kravitz gets sneezy with us on today's episode.
My name is Nancy Magarill. I'm a singer, songwriter, composer, performer, graphic and web designer.
And I'm Peter Michael Marino, and I'm a writer, producer, creator, performer, and educator.
We are New York-based artists you may or may not have heard of.
And we are here to introduce you to other artists you may or may not have heard of. Jason Kravitz is very hot right now, everybody. He's been hot for a little while. He's a movie star. He goes in and out of hot, like every artist, in and out of hot. And Jason does not like going in and out of hot, but when he's in and he's hot, it's a good thing. Jason, you got Snow freaking White.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
You're playing one of the dwarfs. This is crazy.
Sneezy, right?
Yeah, I'm playing Sneezy.
How did this happen?
Well, it was a basic audition, except this one was a little bit different in that instead of giving us a script to read, they just said, do a 1 minute long monologue as Sneezy. So at first, of course, I was like, what? Come on.
Improvise one?
Not improvise, but write one. Write one and do it.
Oh, write one.
Yeah, write something and do it.
Jesus Christ,
and I was like, well, that's
prepare a
not
monologue.
Fair. That's, give me something to do. I don't want to do your homework for you. But then it really ultimately gave me the opportunity to do something that I really could make special. So I did as if Sneezy was being interviewed about why he was called Sneezy, and I did a lot of editing, so it was just a lot of quick cuts. So I was answering an interviewer's questions who you never hear, and I was able to do stuff like accidentally sneeze and then cut to we put a glass lid on the frame and sprayed it with water as if I
of course you did.
You just pick everything you can, and then I just kind of said all these different things about I know people might make fun of my voice and my consistent allergenic qualities, but the truth is I'm happy. Well, I'm not happy. He's happy. I'm just, and then just like that. And I would do
How's
a lot
your
of sneezes.
sneezy sneeze?
Which one? I've learned that there are many.
Did you just spend hours just sneezing over and over in the booth?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. A lot of sneezes. But I would do it. There were some that were in the script because that was part of the character and part of the plot at some points, the sneezes. And so there were big sneezes and there were small sneezes and the typical. I mean, I give a lot of homage to Billy Gilbert, who was the original Sneezy. Nice. And he had a whole sneezing vaudevillian routine with the whole...
Yeah.
You
mean milking it? Jason, how did you learn how to milk a bit? How did you learn?
It's not like me, I know. And then what I learned was you could also throw in sneezes wherever you wanted to. So in the middle of a line, I would just kind of like sneeze.
I love
and
that.
then, so I had all levels of sneezes. And
how
it became
fun.
Just fun to see where I could fit them in.
I love that you turned this this grumpy kind of response to I got to audition and I have to. Actually, this is a pretty good grumpy audition if you're making a sequel and the first guy's not available.
Yeah. Peter Michael Marino is.
Right. He's a natural grumpy. Trust me. You went into it like, I got to do this whole. You know what? I'm gonna freaking do this whole thing, and then you got the part.
Yeah, that was kind of the
it's pretty great.
I'm not somebody who can. I don't like sending anything in that's kind of half-assed, and that's a curse, as well, just because it just means you have to put a lot more work into your auditions.
Which also raises your expectations.
Yes, and then, of course, you don't get most of them because this is the nature of the beast, and you spent hours working on these things and setting it up right and getting the lighting right and making sure you're off book. But, I can't... I have friends who I just did it a couple times, and I'm like, I don't know how you do that.
Wow.
You have to go all out. I wasn't going to send anything half-assed.
Did you have to do this one on camera?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. But wasn't it all voice work?
Yeah, it was all voice work. I mean, we did have CGI dots on our faces and these kind of industrial cameras on our heads that pointed to our faces this far away that we had to wear the entire time we were doing it. So they wanted to use our facial movements, although it's hard to tell from me whether or not they actually used my face, but my mom says she recognized me. I
bet they used parts of it. They probably used parts of your eyes, parts of your cheeks, parts of your mouth.
Disney Disney owns my entire face and voice right now. And, they could do anything they wanted with it. And luckily, so far, knock wood, they have not. They've called me in when we were doing ADR for this, for years.
Tell us what ADR is.
ADR is just picking up vocal tracks after the fact. So I would come in and they say, we need to have you respond in this scene or we added a line. We want you to add that in and just follow it they'll show you the video of the movie and you just have to like pick out where you have to
Is it the thing where they do the beeps? Is there like a series
there'll
of
be
beeps?
like a 3, 2, 1, and then you talk. And sometimes you're trying to match your voice, or sometimes you're matching somebody else's voice,
or shape, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it's literally they said we just need presence. I was like,
what does that mean?
Presence means just stand there and breathe.
Oh,
and I'm
interesting.
Or then we need you to just do it. Literally, I went in one day last year. Sometimes it's a 2-hour session with like screaming and jumping around and making what they call efforts, which are what you'd imagine efforts are. Whatever. And then sometimes
come on, Nancy, where's your effort? Good.
There you go. That's a good effort.
How's that for effort today?
There's a big food fight scene in the movie, and at one point I get a piece of bread shoved into my mouth, and then pepper gets into my nose, and I have to sneeze it out. And of course, it's a giant plugged mouth, and I have to spit everything out. And that was all efforts that I had to do after the fact. And then there's things like, we just need you to see something and go, we just need you to see this thing and go, oh. That's it. That's your day. That's your day. Thanks for coming in. So
Ka-ching.
It was a real variety. Yeah.
And especially at a time where, I don't know how you're doing in the voiceover world. Okay, thank you. Jason just looked out the window. Yeah. So, that's really how we got to know each other, was sitting in waiting rooms at Just Voices and all these other places for years on end, never thinking it's a competition. Well, maybe you did. I I don't think you did, right? We just loved hanging out with each other. You just go from one place to another and And now meaning the past at least 10 years, that we don't have that experience. No. We don't have that opportunity. We don't have even the chance for that opportunity. Right. Non-union stuff, celebrity stuff, same person.
Home recording, home studio recording, and as opposed to going into waiting rooms or going to casting offices. I miss it.
Yeah. Were you guys up for the same gigs?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure. A funny husband. Right. Weird bird.
There's a lot of weird. They would always call me in for parrots.
I was going to say, did you have to go in to replace Gilbert Gottfried at some point? I think I did.
I think I did. I've had that audition, but there were parrots. They wanted that, the parrot that was repeating things, and there were like 2 guys that could really do a good parrot, and it wasn't me. So I'm like, I'll go, but I know who's getting this part. There are people who specialize in parrot.
But it's like what Bill Timoney says is that just going in and meeting them, there's always something right for you, and the more you come in, and it just means they like you and they're looking to get something for you.
Happy to be there.
Professional actor. That Bill Timoney is professional. He is a professional actor.
Do you know Bill?
No, I don't know Bill. Or maybe I do know Bill. Maybe I know Bill.
Probably
know Bill.
You know Bill.
From the waiting rooms.
Maybe.
Well, that was the other thing, was to be honest, when we were doing voiceovers, it wasn't people from, you often did not see people from TV and movies at the auditions, right?
This is true.
Maybe Matthew Laberteau from
right.
I don't even know who that is.
Maybe Steve from Blue's Clues. Maybe that's who we'd see.
Yeah,
that was about it. But then sometimes there'd be a hot Broadway show, and suddenly there'd be Doug Sills at your audition. He'd never been to one before in his life. I don't know why I just brought that up, but
And then when I was first doing it, which I think was probably after you first started doing it, it was mid-90s when I was doing it at first, and you'd go into waiting rooms with people from old TV and movies, like Arnold Stang was always there. Yeah. And, there was just always somebody.
Like actual people who do and announcer things.
Right. Or Larry Storch from F Troop, if anybody remembers that. But like,
oh God,
there was all these voices and people, you're like, oh, I know these people. Oh,
yeah.
I know who that is. And that was always exciting for me. I loved that.
So how did you get into voiceover work? Did you start as a theater actor, or what's your trajectory?
Let me tell you the story of Jason Kravitz.
Yes.
We have a short podcast.
Well, you also have such a resonant voice, so it makes sense that you're doing voiceovers. Both of you have a very, very resonant voice.
I don't have much of a extensive voiceover career, actually. Not compared to a lot of people that from our generation of doing voiceovers. I was here and there. I did some local commercial-y type stuff. Very few, like ones you'd see on television and things like that. That wasn't where I made my voiceover career. I did a lot of on-camera commercials, certainly.
Yeah.
But when I grew up, I grew up in Maryland, as I know you did as well.
Yeah.
I was in Rockville, and then I went to University of Maryland and got out of Maryland and stayed in D.C. for 6 years, and I was able to get all my union cards there. I mean, there's plenty of equity theaters, so that was easy.
Yeah.
And then because we were by the government, there were a lot of industrial films, meaning internal businessy type of films. So there were, anybody was doing business with the government was down there. So there were telephone companies and there were auto safety companies, and they were all based. They had an office there, and they would do internal stuff, and we would be part of that, and that paid union rates and was under union contracts.
So you trained a lot of the people that now have been fired.
Sadly, yeah.
Yeah. I don't mean to make a joke of that because it's not funny.
No, it's just horrible. And I
crazy
actually have a lot of
about.
friends who still work down there and work at the Kennedy Center and who are just, it's a desperate situation. But so I was there for 6 years after college doing a lot of things. And a friend of mine said, you should go to New York. And I said, why? I'm just busy. I'm having a great time.
Oh my gosh, it was like a totally foreign idea.
Yeah, I was like, why would I do that? And then
Such a New Yorker. I'm like,
my brother moved up here, and he was like, he and his wife had moved up, and I had visited them, and
he's also an actor.
He is as well. So I was like, well, I guess I should try this. So I came up to test the waters, and then was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I was 28. And I had done a show in Washington, D.C. With some actors from New York. And when I moved up, I said, would you introduce me to anybody, really? And they only introduced me to not a legit agent, not doing television and film and theater. It was commercial. I auditioned, so I walked in the door to this was called CED, and now Peter and I met there, actually, and then they're now called CESD, and I don't think Peter and I are with them anymore either.
No,
nope. But yeah, so I walked in.
I was very graciously let go.
Yes,
very graciously.
I walked in that door, and they were like, "We want to work with you," and I was like, "That's awesome, that's cool." So I started doing commercials first, and I remember my first commercial audition through them.
What?
Yes, because they were like, go to this office. It was an office of a casting director named Jerry Beaver.
Sure.
Right on Park Avenue.
Mm-hmm, Park Avenue.
And I walked into his office and for this audition, and I saw the weirdest collection of people. I was like, that guy is 350 pounds, and this guy's got crazy red hair coming out sideways, and that guy's got a huge, wait a minute, what am I doing here? So I found my people.
You saw the other dwarves, basically.
I was basically, I guess this is what it means to be quirky.
Yeah, right.
And those people all became my friends over the years, and then that immediately led to you were doing on camera. You were also auditioning for voiceover, and that's when you were sitting in rooms with lots of different people and joking around and making friends and learning about people. And it was a really amazing time to be a young actor in New York. But that's and then I was doing that for 4 years without getting any kind of representation for theater. And film and television.
My jaw is literally hanging open. I just always thought. You're just a legend to me, so I just thought, Jason just arrived,
Yeah, he just arrived.
He arrived ready.
On a cloud of Kleenex.
But it sounds like you were working, at least.
It took a while. It took a long time.
What were you doing when you weren't working?
Well, when I wasn't working, I had met a friend from the D.C. area who had moved up, and he was working with some other actors on pieces of one-person shows, like 10-minute snippets every week. They were challenging each other to bring in snippets of character-based scripted material, and it was called A Rumble in the Red Room. And
of course,
a group of people were doing that, and I went to see it, and I was like, I have to be involved with this. I'll bring in stuff next week. And they were
42nd Street, right? And Dyer Avenue?
First it was on 39th and 9th, but we're 37th and 9th at a place called the Market Cafe. And then,
oh God, I remember the Market Cafe.
You remember the Market Cafe?
Yes.
It was great. Loved that place.
Yeah.
But the rest of the area was so sketchy.
Yeah.
It was basically the Lincoln Tunnel entrance.
It was.
Yes.
It is.
It still is.
It still is. Except more condos.
Yeah.
And then I moved. We moved up to 42nd and Dyer Avenue, where the Pulse Theater is, and then so we did that for like 4 years, developing material and writing our own material, which was so great to be able to do. What
were you doing for a living?
I had saved up some money from DC, which was helpful, and by the time that started to run out, I started booking some television commercials here and there, and little things to keep me going. Plus, I was living in a $600 a month studio apartment with no, car, no family. I didn't have anything to worry about except for making that rent. And I had a little money set aside from my time in DC, from all my industrial films.
Did you do a lot of industrials also around that time, the 90s?
Not really here. Not in New York. I was going back down and doing them in DC still, actually. I was still making money that way, going down and working for companies like MCI. Anybody remembers MCI?
Yes.
Right. I'm sure Melinda Buckley also did an MCI at some point.
But I was working with Carol Nadell, who was casting a lot of,
That's
live
right.
industrial things.
Yes, she was.
I traveled around the country pitching Canon printers at one point, for about 2 months. So there were always little jobs to pick up. And then a buddy of mine and I had written a lot of stuff for the Red Room together. So we made our own show out of it. And we did the show a few times trying to get an agent.
That's when you were your first time producing.
Yes, first time producing at the Producers Club.
That's where you do it.
And then at other places. And eventually we said, our friends in LA haven't seen our material. Let's go out there for, 3 shows. We found a space by word of mouth. We never saw it. It was upstairs behind the famous Improv. We went up there and we did the show. And we got one agent that I knew out there and a manager to come see the show. And they invited...
And that was back when you had to actually talk on the phone.
Yes, you had to actually call people. And they invited... Well, I had also invited... This is another fun story. I invited a friend of a friend. And she worked at Carsey Werner Productions.
Oh, yeah.
She was... just literally a secretary at Carsey Werner. She'd been there for years, working for the head of development. But this agent and this manager started calling other people going, Carsey Werner Development is coming to the show. Ooh. And they started going, wait a minute. So we got this casting director, a couple people to come to the show that were casting. And they said to us, this is 98, the fall of 98. And they said, we are putting together the roster for this coming year's Aspen Comedy Festival. And
that was the thing to do. That was the thing to do.
They said, it just so happens everybody is in town right now from around the country because we're making our final choices. We have to be at the Improv on Saturday at 7 o'clock. If you can do your show, an hour-long version of your show at 5:30, we'll bring everybody.
Oh my God, that's so wonderful.
We got all our friends to come. They came to the show, and within 24 hours, we're being invited to the Aspen Comedy Festival.
Wow.
Where suddenly we're performing for the cast of SCTV.
Wow. Yeah.
Every development executive in Hollywood, and Bernie Brillstein, and it was insane.
Isn't that crazy? Boom. From nothing to boom.
And were you thinking at that time, this is it, here we go.
Yeah.
This is what I've been waiting for.
This is it. But except I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and neither did these agents.
Nobody knew what it was.
So we were like, what are we? So we got back to LA. We had just been visiting. We were just like, okay, guys, we'll go out there for a little bit. And they said, well, you're going to have meetings. You can have meetings with every network. And we went out and we had meetings. And
Before email. How did this happen?
We called it the Couch and Water Tour because we would sit on the couch and they'd offer us a water. And that's what we would do. And they would all say the same thing to us. We asked our agents, what do we need to do? They said, just be yourselves. And we're like, okay. But just the wrong answer. Because when we sat on the couch, they'd go, what do you want to do? What is it you want to do?
Ooh.
And we would say, what they wanted to hear was, oh, okay, he's the dumb guy. I'm the smart guy. We go back to college. Here's the script. And they'll tear it apart and they'll bring us in and work with somebody else. But, to help us out to make something. But we were like, whatever you want us to do. What you got?
Oh.
No, bye.
So that wave, that great wave crested and collapsed. Yeah. And then we were backpedaling, just going, what do we do? How do we salvage this? But everybody was kind of done with us at that point.
Oh my God.
We couldn't even we had offers of changing agents to hire to bigger agencies and management companies, and we were like, no, we're loyal to these people because they got us here.
Yeah.
And then we end up, with nothing, just a few 4 months, 3 months later, but we were in LA. And it just so happened while I was there, I got an audition for a Napoleonic, mean DA on the 4th season of the multi-Emmy award-winning television show The Practice. And it was 1 episode, maybe 2 if the story continued. And it was supposed to be, I think Jason Alexander was supposed to do it, but he declined.
Wow.
And I auditioned, and I was in complete unknown. They did not tell casting that I had done the Aspen Comedy Festival. I was an actor from New York.
Oh,
right. That's right.
I'd worked in New York.
That's your
I was
cred.
an actor from New York, and that got me this gig. And David Kelly thankfully started writing for my character and kept writing, and then I was there for 2 years.
That's so
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I did 1 season just as a recurring guest star for about, out of 22, I probably did 13 of those episodes, and then he brought me back the next year as a series regular. And then my character was
great.
gunned down in a car at the end of that.
Oh, they killed you off.
That's the best way to go.
Listen, man, I didn't expect to be there. You can kill me off after 2 years.
It's great.
This is why when we were in Europe together, people recognized you, right? From those old TV shows.
Well, from the old TV shows. Maybe not that one. That one didn't play in a lot of places, but there were other ones that did. I think, the last episode.
I'm leading into, so this began your career
so began my career.
Being that guy, like DAs and stuff on a lot of these shows.
I never got back into a series regular position, but I was certainly I got to play on a lot of stages and work with a lot of amazing people and idols of mine. I got to do... I got to work with Peter Boyle on Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh my God, he was so fantastic.
He was great, and he was so nice to me. He was like the sweetest guy. So I got that under my belt. That's another one, and then just so many shows that I've gotten to do over the years, and people to play with. So it's been really fulfilling. I think the one that I get recognized the most for in Europe is I was on the last episode of Friends. I had one scene on the last episode of Friends, and especially in the UK, man, it's beyond what happens in the United States. They love Friends. So when I say, I was the guy you were the guy in the cab in the last episode? Oh my God, you were in Phoebe's cab? Tell me everything. Who did you meet? What were they like?
They love it.
So my niece is a huge Friends fan, and she's going to go nuts when I text her after this.
I was in the cab in the last episode. I got into Phoebe's cab. That's my claim to fame there. The other one that I get a lot of these days because it's replayed generation after generation is Gilmore Girls. I had one episode of Gilmore.
That.
See, I don't watch enough TV to know any of this.
I don't, when I realized it was a thing, I had literally 1 episode of Gilmore Girls, and I don't remember much about the character or the episode except for what I got to do on the episode. I was their neighbor, and that was all I remember. And I asked her to water my lawn. Well, I was walking through Macy's probably about 6 years ago around Christmas, and this young woman, probably, I'm going to guess 19 or 20, who was working there for Christmas, like seasonal employee. She goes, "Oh my God, it's Dwight from 8 O'Clock at the Oasis." And I'm like, I don't know what are you talking about? Your character, you played Dwight in the episode 8 O'Clock at the Oasis on Gilmore Girls. I love that show. I'm like, how? I don't remember that, but she did. And
does that happen to you a lot, where people think they know you, or you have one of those faces, right? Yeah. Where people probably all the time are saying,
I think they're always right, though, how they know you.
No, I get a lot of is your name Scooter? Did you go to Yale?
Oh, really?
Well, I was in Hawaii years ago, 10 years ago.
This is a real story.
And somebody said to me, do you live on the Big Island? The Big Island of Manhattan. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
I've had so much. I had somebody recognize me on the subway once when I was with my son when he was very young, and he was like, "Can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. Are you a parole officer?" "No."
Are you a parole officer?
Do you work in the criminal justice system in some way? "No, I don't." "Do you recognize me?" No, I don't. Goodbye. Have a nice day.
Oh my God. You're like, okay, I'm leaving now. Fast.
I met this young actress. She actually wound up becoming like a huge YouTube sensation, and then she fell very, very hard due to some inappropriate things.
Going crazy.
Jason Egan from Ars Nova hooked me up with her because she was this talent and she needed some direction, and we met at the West Bank, and where everybody is, and she's with a friend, 2 friends. This is my friend John. This is my friend Matt. Hey, hi, nice to meet you. Oh, Matt, you're friends with Sheila Head, right? Nope, don't know her. Oh, dude, Suzanne Hefner? No. Dude, no. Oh, I thought you were like, she was a Syracuse guy? No. Oh, God, it's drive me crazy. Well, we'll figure it out. It's like I knew him. I met him.
He's probably some big star.
Fucking Matt Stone, guy who wrote fucking
South Park.
Everything. South Park and everything.
Isn't that the weirdest thing when that happens, though? It's
oh, my God. So, I did not get the job.
Right. I've learned to actually keep my mouth shut when I think I know someone now. Because it's like, know you're going to know, oh, right, they're from something that you've seen. Or
now, the opposite could happen if it's like your best friend's brother, and you're like, oh, don't say anything. And you're like, why are you ignoring me? What the hell? I thought you were famous. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I have realized, and I was talking about this recently, that when people talk to me about different shows that I've done, I have an anecdote for every single one of them. It's like I had somebody go through my resume with me, and they're like, what about this show? And I'm like, well, this is what I remember about that.
This is your book.
It's my book that no one's going to want to read. But it's,
are you writing a book?
No, God, no.
No, they'll read it when you die. Don't worry. You should do it.
Yeah, maybe.
You should do it. This is my part of this is the part of the podcast where I give our guest an assignment.
You're getting earlier and earlier.
It used to just happen at the end, but sorry, Jason.
Things to assign. I've got enough things to write.
Wait, so I just want to jump real quick to like your first Broadway show.
Broadway.
It was a Broadway show that also just got a lot of attention because of circumstances within the show.
And what was it?
Well, we're gonna find out.
My first Broadway show?
I think it's.
I'm not sure.
Oh,
was it a musical? Are you talking about a musical? No, it was not a musical. My first Broadway show was not. It was actually Sly Fox in 2003, which was an update of Volpone, the show Volpone.
With Uta Hagen?
No. Sly Fox was originally done. It was written by Larry Gelbart of MASH fame.
Of course.
And he
also, I think he is a Syracuse graduate, actually.
Really?
Maybe.
Well, he wrote an update of an old play called Volpone. And it took place in the American West, and it starred George C. Scott was the original character. They did it again in 2003 using Richard Dreyfuss, and it was a star-studded cast of that era, which was Eric Stoltz and Rene Auberjonois and Elizabeth Berkley and Bob Dishy, and Bronson Pinchot, all these people. And then
was it the Roundabout?
No, it was Broadway. It was a Broadway show, and then they
Roundabout does Broadway shows. It's not
it was like a straight commercial run.
Okay.
And it was directed by the amazing Arthur Penn, who directed Bonnie and Clyde most famously.
Yeah.
So they were doing a replacement cast, as Broadway does. They were changing up the cast at a certain point when contracts run out. And Richard Kind was taking over for Richard Dreyfuss.
Love him.
Bronson was moving up to Eric Stoltz's role. And they brought in Carol Kane for one of the roles. And I replaced Bronson in the cast. And it was tumultuous, I would say.
God. I didn't expect that.
And we rehearsed with Arthur Penn for 3 weeks. He wanted to redo the show. It had gotten out of hand, and he wanted to contain it again.
Wow.
And so he worked with us for 3 weeks, and we ran for 2 and closed.
Oh.
So that was my first Broadway experience.
Well, okay.
Awesome. But my second Broadway experience was a show called The Drowsy Chaperone, which I
was
think
that
is
with
what you were
Sutton
referring
Foster?
to.
If you want to stop for one moment, we
Yeah.
might have to stop because my heat decided to come on.
It doesn't matter.
I can't hear. I can hear a click or two. But
I heard a
that's about
click.
it.
Yeah.
Maybe we won't even edit this out. This is real life, folks.
This is life,
how
man.
it works.
Yeah.
This is
We
it.
we just did an episode with someone chopping wood. I think we've reached that
you've
level.
broken that one, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
so-
euphemism, by the way.
Oh, really? Someone's chopping wood, eh? I gotcha. Yes, we did the Drowsy Chaperone, which is a Tony Award-winning show. And
You're not contractually obligated to say Tony Award-winning show.
I just want to brag a little bit. I had very little to do with it because
Just
it was
making
for the writing of the show more than anything else.
Yeah.
Sutton Foster, Beth Level, Danny Burstein, just
Quite a cast.
A great group. Georgia Engel.
What?
That's a good Danny.
My Danny
exactly.
Burstein.
And then I got cast to play one of the roles, and they were looking for someone who could play my brother, and I got my brother involved, and he played my brother, and we played these kind of old vaudevillian gangsters, which
There's
was
that word vaudeville again.
a lot of vaudeville is where it all started.
My friend, On my notes, my pre-show notes, it says vaudeville.
Vaudeville.
That is what I want to talk to you about because I've always thought Jason Kravitz lives 3 different lives. The one he's in now, somehow he was a comedian at the Borscht Belt, very young. That didn't work out somehow, and they came recycled back to Jason now. And then one before that is that you were on some vaudeville stage with checkered pants and carrying a suitcase and doing a dance.
I got ukuleles galore here.
I mean, honestly, yes, this is...
I tap dancing, ukuleles, I played the
kazoo.
saw. I played the saw. I literally played the musical saw. So it's like literally anything that was popular in vaudeville seems to be where my heart goes.
Wow.
Strangely enough, I don't know why. Or I have 2 accordions that I don't know how to play, but I feel like they should be a part of my shtick.
Dude, you can do a whole YouTube series of Jason learns accordion.
Let's do it.
Sorry,
Another
I just
piece of advice.
another piece of advice.
Another assignment.
So my question is then, Jason, because I
yes.
feel like you were a TV kid the way I am.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That I know what's showed on TV in the tri-state area, and so I always bond with all these people of a certain age about shows we watch on these weird networks. Did you watch Hal Roach stuff and Leon Schlesinger and all those? Yeah,
the old
coming back to Betty Boop, actually written by the person who wrote The Drowsy Chaperone, the parts that you didn't,
Robert Martin,
the parts that you didn't write.
Wow,
yes.
I feel like I lived a totally different reality than you guys. I don't know,
I knew all the Little Rascal stuff by heart. I knew all
Same. Laurel and Hardy.
We had to the Three Stooges, and even the Marx Brothers. I knew the Marx Brothers early,
and even just watching old black and white comedy movies, full-length features. Yeah,
the real influences for me were my parents had the Alan Sherman album, My Son the Folk Singer, and I knew those songs back and forth, even if I didn't understand they were parodies. They were satires of other songs, very Borscht Belt humor. I knew them. I knew that it made people laugh. I knew it made my family laugh. So that's where we focused our attention.
This is Alan Sherman of the Sherman Brothers?
No, Alan Sherman of Hello Mutta, Hello Fada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And he had a lot of parody songs of his era. And I loved those. And then the Smothers Brothers were a big influence.
Oh, God, yeah.
For my brother and I, we used to do a lot of Smothers Brothers routines. We would imitate them. Yeah, it was that was the era of stuff that I was really into. And then Looney Tunes, man. I mean, we were quoting entire Looney Tunes episodes. The Mad Scientist episode with the giant, monster.
Celery stalk.
What an interesting monster. It's like, who knows that? I don't know.
You know what's so interesting about that? Kids now and younger comedians don't have those influences. They really, the cartoons that they grew up with are very different. Are so much less mature and less interesting and creative, and the comedians are much more not political, but there's something very different. They're not as outrageous,
Well, if you think about a lot of the comedy that I'm talking about growing up with, that wasn't even meant for kids originally.
Right.
It was like the Looney Tunes was not meant for kids. They were meant for people before movies and to, all that stuff.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, if you think about
yeah, you're right.
What kind of kids who would aim a cartoon about an opera to kids? And you have this entire who would do Edward G. Robinson type characters for kids?
Right.
It was meant for adults, and I think that's why there's just a different sensibility. But those were our memes in a way. These people are growing up in these memes. Our memes were the phrases that we got from Porky Pig and Daffy Duck and Marvin the Martian and people like that.
I think also having a limited number of channels is what exposed us to those other things and not a whole lot more. You know what I'm saying? And kids now have also, we could not record things.
Right.
For a long time. I mean, I'm sure like me, I used my tape. I tape recorded the Jeffersons. Sure. That was my favorite thing to act out the Jeffersons. Nothing weird about that. But I just found that show hilarious. The writing of the banter, the characters.
It was a great show.
Killed me. Then we got VCRs. So maybe we wouldn't go to the movies and see new movies. We would just watch that Seven Faces of Death movie over and over and over and over and over again.
I don't know. VCRs. We were still going to movies when there were VCRs. I think
Spinal Tap was my
not when I was like a teenager. It was much easier to just sit around the basement and watch. I'm just saying we can see how technology has sort of opened our world, but it's also limited it.
Kids. I mean, I think I think one of the problems in society is that we're always being divided in smaller groups.
Yeah.
And we don't have a communal experience anymore. And even as far back as early as like the early 2000s when I was just listening to somebody talk about this. Will and Grace, right? Will and Grace was one of the main cultural phenomenons that helped overturn bans on gay marriage.
Yeah.
Because people started seeing this, and that's what you watched. You watched what was on television. You didn't kind of go to whatever the little thing was carved out for you. And so when you think about a successful show right now, like Succession or Severance or one of these, everybody's talking about these shows. Everybody's talking about these shows. Even Squid Game and those during the pandemic, where everybody was talking about. They have such a microscopic audience compared to your average sitcom in the early 2000s.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be something as big as Seinfeld or Friends in the 90s, or even a Will and Grace, things that people were like, oh, I know, I've seen that show, or any of these sitcoms that were on TV. That's what people watched because you had 3 or 4 or 5 choices.
Right.
So as a society, the fair had to kind of fit enough people's sensibilities that they'd be interested in tuning in. So you had to hit a lot of different audience, and then you could have everybody come to a consensus about moving forward on things.
Yeah.
So all these shows, even
that's so well put.
The Jeffersons and things like that were revolutionary just because everybody was seeing, like, I heard a quote in a book that was talking about 1973, I think it was about that year. And that was when Hollywood was very much the focus for music and film and television. Everything was happening there. And they were talking about the predecessor to the Jeffersons, All in the Family.
Yeah.
And they were saying All in the Family, the way they described it was about the negotiating the what did they call it? Not the silent generation. Was it the silent generation? Yeah. The silent generation negotiating the terms of surrender with the new generation.
Wow.
And it was kind of like Archie, even Carol O'Connor would say Archie was not a likable guy. No one to be like Archie. But it was his world that he was having to give up and recognize, there are people who are anti-war. There are people who were draft dodgers and they're good people. And there were people who are black. And there were people, and here's Sammy Davis Jr. And here's can't treat my neighbors like they're lesser than me and they're black. And that's what that was about. And so the fracturing of television and movies and everything else and music has made our culture very separate and kind of given rise to where we're at now in how we can't really relate to each other anymore. There's
and also the abuse of the internet. I mean, the internet was the great game changer, the great equalizer, and then people learned how to manipulate people with it and own it. And so then it's also helped them spread propaganda, disinformation. There's a lot of, it still could do that.
It's also helped a lot of people spread really great stuff. Like
Absolutely.
Many of Jason's projects, which of late have been very, very, that's what I do and the co-host.
And it always will. I think that's the beauty of creators, and that we will always create and we will always keep it going. Even in times like this where we're concerned, rightfully we're concerned because there's a lot of really crazy shit going on. And that's our job, right? As artists, is to draw it out.
I think that we're missing the consensus anymore with art. Art in my mind is a way of bringing people together in ways, and it's harder to do now than it ever has been, thanks to the digitalization of everything.
Yeah.
But as Pete is turning
easier
as well. You're right. You can connect people.
Oh, you're such
We're
an
literally
optimist,
talking.
Peter.
I'm not. We're literally talking to somebody who has had major, millions of views on things that he created that were only distributed on the internet.
This is
so.
True. It's a way of
there you go. I'm going to play both sides of the kern.
Do it, baby.
Yeah.
That's all.
Wow.
Okay. Great.
Okay. On that note.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can find can find out about all the great things that Jason has done online. He's very viral songs and viral videos and political things.
Their songs are great.
Thank you. The pandemic for me was like a choice creative moment. No offense to anybody who lost people in the pandemic, and it was a horrible thing, and there was a lot of unnecessary death and destruction and ruining of lives. Yes. And I think I found during the pandemic that it was a time that I was so overjoyed. You didn't have to like get into the hustle bustle of everything. You could just sit and create things and then share them with people, as Pete said, online. So I found a lot of solace in that, and then a real enjoyment of that. I learned how to edit. I learned how to record. It was really great. It was a great moment for me, and I'm trying to extend that, but the rat race creeps in. You know?
Well, I think that's the thing that is a challenge to always do, and to stay on top of all the technical stuff that's out there. I mean, we're doing the podcast, the same thing. It's this wonderful world that's opened up. I never thought in my life I'd do a podcast, and here it is, and it's great. It's a great way to reach people and talk to people, meet people like you.
Yeah.
Great. I think that
you guys don't already know each other?
No, we met. I don't know if we met through you or Kelly. I think I knew.
No, it's through Peter. I don't talk to Kelly as often as I'd like, so it was probably through Pete. She participated in some of my pandemic, group performance pieces.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I had
I'm going to kill her for not telling me.
Oh, well, it was I don't know.
There was a pandemic going on. There was a lot going on.
Other things happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically, what happened was during the early part of the pandemic, if you remember, there was a much panned video going around featuring Gal Gadot, who had said, "Hey guys, I was listening to this song being played and I want to sing my song with my friends. We're going to sing the song Imagine." And so she starts singing Imagine, and it cuts to all these famous people that she got to sing it as well, in completely different keys and completely different tempos, standing in their luxury houses in their big, huge gardens while everybody's cooped up in their apartments. And it was a little tone deaf. And so I went on Facebook and I said, who wants to do a version of what we just saw, but we're going to use the Styx song, Come Sail Away. And so I got a lot of people to join in on that. And I said, just send me a clip of you singing some of the song. And people went nuts because no one was doing anything. They're like, I can participate. And then I cut it together into a thing. And then people were like, let's do another one. So I was like, well, let's do another kitschy song like Total Eclipse of the Heart. And then we did Africa. We did all these, greatest hits of the 70s and 80s. And then people started taking it seriously. And people were sending in the videos themselves playing instruments and then singing in the same key and at the same tempo. And then we were doing Under Pressure, and we were doing Happy Together. And it was just like whatever song struck my vibe for what I was feeling at that moment, which was sometimes terrified, sometimes positive, sometimes, just chill and wanting to enjoy my time with my friends. And I would just have people send me clips, and I'd spend time editing it, and then I'd release it. So we did like 12 of them. You became
the We Are the World Wide Net. You became the We Are the World
Wide Web.
Hey, Jason, before you go, my mother loves you, and she listens to our podcast every Sunday and gives me notes. Not as many notes lately. We're improving.
Wow.
So yeah, I
feel better about that.
Just say hello to Flo. That would be
Flo.
Awesome.
Hello, Flo.
Great. Thank you, Nancy,
Hi,
for letting
Flo.
me do that. Yeah, she only had one note for you. She just had plenty for me, so don't worry.
Let me know if she has any for me.
Too late.
Let me know if she's any for me, too. We can see what she says.
Nah. We love you, Jason, and we're grateful that you're bringing stuff to New York all the time, bringing stuff to the internet all the time, and you're in a freaking Disney cartoon movie.
I'm so happy for you.
Movie cartoon thing.
Can I make a plug?
Yeah.
Yeah.
July 10th at Joe's Pub, I'm doing my show that I've done for 10 years.
Never ending.
It's called Off the Top. It's a one-man cabaret musical improvised show. And it's been going pretty well, so we're doing it July 10th at Joe's Pub.
Hey, thanks for checking us out. Links to today's guest can be found in the show notes.
Don't forget to subscribe, like us, rate us, and tell all your friends about arts and craft.